In this lesson, we'll use the copy node to duplicate the wheels of our car. So we're picking up right where we left off in the previous lesson, and we have our single wheel here, and we have a speed control so that we can control how fast the rotation on the wheel assembly occurs. Just a little bit of housekeeping right before we begin duplicating our wheel around the vehicle. I want to go back and clean up this interface a little bit so that we don't have these input labels here. And we'll discuss how these input labels are used in a future lesson, but for now I just kind of want to hide them from this interface. Now remember, the way that we access that ability to edit the parameter interface is right here with this little gear icon in the top toolbar of the parameters view here. So we'll click that, hold down the mouse, and the first option is Edit Parameter Interface. When I do, I get the Edit Parameter Interface dialog box here. And I want to come and select this Input Label 1. Just single click on it and highlight it. And notice that there's an option over here on this far right part of the dialog box to make it invisible. So I'll click Make It Invisible and click Apply. Now if we look back over here at our interface inside of Houdini, we can see that that particular label is gone. So let's do that with 2, 3, and 4. I'm just going to click, and I can hold down Shift and click on 4, and it'll grab everything in between there. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the invisible checkbox when I had all 3 of those selected, and we'll just click Accept. Now whenever I click on my Wheel 1 subnetwork node here, all I see is my wheel speed. It just makes the interface a lot cleaner and easier to use. Okay, now let's duplicate this wheel and place it around in the appropriate spots on the concept car. First, I'm going to view the concept car in its final state by moving the display flag over to this final edit node in the path of the concept car. Now I need to be able to see the wheel and the concept car simultaneously. Well, before I lay down a merge node to do that, I want to show you how we can actually template objects and use that to our advantage when we're creating these things. So to do that, I'm going to move the display flag back to the Wheel 1 node. Oops, I right-clicked there by accident. So we'll just left-click on that far right-hand flag there. That moves the display flag over to Wheel 1. And the second flag on the Edit node, we can click, and that will template that object, which basically just means we're seeing it in a lighter shaded wireframe version. So it gives me an idea of where the car is without it actually obscuring my view. And this is the mode we'll work in while we place these wheels and tires around on the vehicle. So I'm going to make sure that I have Wheel 1 selected so it has the little yellow highlight around it. And what I want to do is to duplicate that wheel. Well, in Houdini, that's actually done using what's called a copy node. So all we need to do is to choose a copy node from the tab menu. So I'll press tab and type out COPY. And you'll see right at the top of the list is a copy node. So I'll click on that, place it here in the network, right beneath my Wheel 1 node. And I want to connect the very first, on the far left-hand side, the first output of the wheel node to the very first input of the copy node. Now I'll move my display flag down to the copy node. Now at first, it appears that nothing has happened inside of the viewport. We still only have one wheel. Well, that's because the copy node right now is currently only making one copy. Let's drag down our parameter interface a little bit so we can see a little bit more of the properties here. So we'll see that we have the number of copies being made is just 1. Well, what we want are actually 2. We're going to start off by creating just the front wheels, then we'll duplicate those to the back. So right now we just want 2 wheels. We want the front left and the front right. So I'm going to change this number of copies over to 2. Well, it still appears as if nothing has really happened. Well, something has actually happened. What we have now is actually 2 pieces of geometry, 2 versions of the wheel that are sitting right on top of each other. What I need to do here is to use the Translate, Rotate, and Scale options to offset the position of that second copy. So if I just come over here and use my value ladder, again, I'm going to middle click here inside of the Translate X property, and just give it some value. And you can begin to see that I do have 2 copies of the wheel here. So I have the option of sort of moving those around. I can put them anywhere in the scene I want using this translate tool. Okay, what I actually want to do though here is not use the translate. What I want to do is to create an inverse or mirror image of that wheel. And I can do that by scaling it in a negative direction. So basically what I want to do is mirror this wheel assembly over on this side of the vehicle. Now I can actually take my scale down to just being -1 in the X direction, and I'll get a mirror image of that wheel. Now it's being mirrored around the very center of the vehicle, so it's a -1 scale based off of the center of the vehicle. And by using that little trick, I've got my second wheel, my front right wheel, exactly where I want it to be. Okay. Now I need to duplicate that set of 2 wheels and then translate them backwards so that they fit into the second little cubbies for the wheels here in the back under the fenders. So in order to do that, I'm going to use a second copy node. So again, over here in the network view, we'll make sure that we're taking it from the copy 1, the first copy that we laid down, and we just want to create another copy node. So again, I'm just going to do tab and type in COPY, and there's the copy node. So I'll lay down a second version of the copy node, wire it up to the first input, and move the flag down so that I'm now viewing that second set. Now the same rules apply as they did when we duplicated the first one. Right now we only have 1 set of those 2 wheels here. I need to do 2 copies, so I have 1 for the front and 1 for the back. Now, you don't see them because they're right on top of each other because we haven't added any sort of transformation. Translator rotates to them. And what I want to do is scoot them backwards. And I can see here using the indicator in the lower left hand of my viewport that Z is the direction that I want to scoot them backwards in. So I'm just going to come up here and then translate Z. I'll use my value ladder and just begin to scoot them backwards. Now to get a better idea of exactly where that's landing, I'm going to look at this from my right view. So I'll just use the right viewport and kind of zoom in on that area where the fender well is. Use my value ladder, and I can come down to the like 100ths or 1,000ths and really get a finite adjustment so I get a lot of control over where that wheel is going to end up sitting. And right now I just kind of want to center it up between around this area of the fender well and like this area here on the fender well. Okay, let's look at this in our perspective viewport. Okay, I think those tires and wheels are in a pretty good position. Let's see what it looks like with the geometry merged together so that it's all one piece. To do that, we'll use a merge node. So we'll tab M-E-R-G, there comes the merge node, we'll click it, lay that in the network. First, we'll wire in the concept car here. So click and click, wire those together. And then we want to merge in the wheel. So we'll click here, click here. Now we move our display flag down to that merge. And we see all of it put together. Now right now we have a little bit of shading anomaly happening inside of the viewport. And we're getting this warning here on our merge node. Now it's really nothing to be alarmed at. If we middle click on that merge node, we'll get some information. And we see that we have some information regarding UVs and normals that are a little bit different. And all that means is that the information coming from this left-hand side in the concept car may not match 100% with what's available over here on the right-hand side. Now we'll talk about that in the next lesson whenever we start to work with shading and materials. But before we get there, I want to take note that the tire and wheel assembly is, for my taste, a little bit too close to this fender well. I'd like to get a little more spacing in there. But I've already got all of my copies in place. Well, this is where, again, working with the procedural nature of Houdini becomes extremely handy. All I need to do is to insert a transform node before we make the copies and then shift them down just a little bit. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to hit Tab on the keyboard. I'll add another transform node. Now remember, I can drop it right on the wire here, and Houdini will automatically insert it and connect it up for me. And now I just want to shift those wheels down a little bit. So I come over to my translate, and in translate Y, I'll use my value ladder and come down to about the thousandths area so I get some really fine control over where those are going to be. Okay, so now I can scoot them down until I get them placed where I kind of want them. And really, again, this is just a matter of aesthetics. For me, I just wanted a little more clearance there. So that's looking pretty good right there, I think. All right, with our wheels in place, let's begin to discuss shading and texturing and fixing this sort of anomaly that we have in our merge. And that's where we'll start in the next lesson.